Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. We're back, guys, with part 2 of Laurie White's amazing story and amazing journey of her travels from being shot, losing her leg, and now we find out what Laurie has done since then.
Some possibility here and some things that I didn't think were going to be in my future. Maybe I need to shift my thinking.
And so was that kind of what kickstarted your return? Because you did return to active service, which is just, again, incredible, like absolutely incredible. So was that kind of, do you feel like that was the turning point of like, yep, I can do this. I can get there. That's my goal. I'm going to run the pair and I'm going to do it and I'm going to pass it. So is that kind of where that went?
Yeah, I think he was definitely the one who planted the seed. No question about that. And then my really dark times followed after that, though. I will say that. But when I did get into physio in earnest and was really like in the daily grind, I just knew it was possible. And so when I started off, it was more about learning to trust my prosthetic, like trying to figure out my balance, like where's my foot in space now? I don't really have a sense of where my body is when I move it anymore. It's felt like this foreign appendage that wasn't part of me. So I had a lot of learning to do in terms of how to use the equipment properly. And then once I was able to start getting my balance, then it was kind of like, oh, well, like, I wonder how well I can do at walking. And then it became a real challenge to walk without a limp and make it really natural and make my gait as good as it could be. And then it was, well, maybe I could skate again because I was a figure skater and I really wanted to reclaim that. And then what about rollerblading? I loved rollerblading, biking. And then it was that fucking running again. But all the things that are so wrongfully taken from you, now you want. Because you want to earn them all back and you want them to still be part of your life. And so it was this progression, but I was very, very committed. And so I needed that routine in those early months because I needed to be accountable to somebody. I needed to be expected at physio and I needed to know this is what my day was going to look like. And I needed to have those goals, those tangible, very small, but meaningful goals. And they were really, really important to me, especially in those early months.
I think too, and having been a previous athlete, I think that is also, it helps with that, right? Because it's like, physically what your body needs to do to get to that stage. And as an athlete that doesn't just occur. It's not just one day you wake up and you can figure skate and you can do, like that it's going to take and you're going to fall and you're going to have to get up and you're going to try it again. And you're going to have to, in biking, you're going to fall off your bike and you're going to have to learn how to ride it again. And so I think that, being an athlete, that kind of lends that mental fortitude and discipline and determination as well, because it's going to be little teeny steps that finally get you to where you need to go, and just digging in and being like, but that the end result is going to be freaking amazing when you get there, and you can just keep digging and keep doing something and you'll get there.
It was a little proof to myself like along the way, right? Was those little steps were proving to myself that I could. And I agree with you with the physical side and that experience that I had as a skater, especially. I think that came into play so much. Like my physiotherapist was like, your body awareness and your proprioception, like your ability to know where your body is in space, and that precision and that balance that's required to be a skater was absolutely crucial for my successful recovery, for sure.
And so are you basically back to, I say 100% with quotation marks, but like 100% in your new reality to the things you want to do and the sports you want to do and the athletic endeavors that you want to do? Or was there some adjustment? Was there some changes that you needed to make?
So what was interesting is my prosthetist, the guy who builds my legs, I've had him since day one. I've stayed with him consistently over these years, and God, I don't know what he'll do if he ever decides to retire. But he'd never been to a skating rink, but you have to break down each activity that you want to do. And so it was unlike any of the injuries that I'd had prior to losing my leg. I mean, you do your obligatory rehab and you do whatever you need to do in order to recover from whatever injury you had. And so I kind of feel like I had the same expectation of this. It was like, if I do all the things that, then everything else should just fall into place like they always have before, if I had a knee surgery or broke my wrist or something like that. And it was such naive thinking because it's not in any way the same. Every single activity and movement really has to be broken down step by step. So it's really time consuming. So I did regain the ability to do all those things. It's certainly not natural, a lot of them, but I am able to. And I know it gave me a lot of hope for if I decided, like, for example, I went skiing in Smithers. That was one of the places that I really wanted to try to ski again. I was never much of a skier at all. I'd only skied a few times in my life, but it was one of those things like, oh, can I? And so I went to my prosthetist and said, okay, I want to ski. Like, what am I going to need to know and do? And how am I going to have to adjust my leg in order to be able to do these activities? So it gave me that confidence that I could do stuff. I just had to make sure that I planned for it. Like, nothing could really be spontaneous. So
Yeah.
that gave me a lot of comfort going forward.
I like I said, I'm in awe of you. I honestly am, because I think to myself, like I said, like, I don't know that I think that I would probably give up. I think that I would probably be like, and fuck this, and fuck that, and I'm not doing this anymore. And I guess I now live my life on the couch with Netflix and chips.
You wouldn't, you sound like you're too stubborn for that. And I think I am too. You get sick of yourself fast too when you're lying on the couch doing a lot of feeling sorry for yourself. You get very sick of yourself.
That is true. That is true. So you go, and the other question I was going to ask is, again, how was the RCMP through this? Like, were they a good support system? Were they, and I mean, again, I'm not looking, if they were terrible, you don't have to bash them. If you don't want to, feel free to bash them if you'd like to. I just totally up to you, but just, I mean, like, I would hope that for this traumatic of an event, for this young of an officer, that the supports were there for you, and that and supports is kind of the only word to say, but like the rehabilitation was there, the support was there, the colleague support was there for you. Like, did you feel like that was well taken care of?
I think it's kind of a loaded question in some respects. I had a ton of support from my detachment. And you have to keep in mind, like, that's all I knew. I knew my troop from depot. They were spread out all across the country, of course. And then I had my detachment in Kitimat, pretty much. That's really all I knew at that stage in my career. So I had a tremendous amount of support from those groups. I think from the management supervisory kind of stuff, it was a struggle in a lot of ways. One was that my situation, it was very high profile. And so it was obviously very sudden, and nobody knows me. I don't know them. I don't know where to reach out for any of the answers that I need to have. It was also 1998. So it's not like the internet and everything was like information was not easily accessible. So we had to rely on different means of communication, right? Like, you didn't have those same channels for learning about policy and what were your benefits and who's going to be paying for what and all that. And so it did lend a lot of, it added another layer of confusion and stress to an already highly stressful situation. I was grateful for my family, because my family took on different roles, and one of my brothers went out and rented me an apartment, and the other ones were looking into benefits and all the insurance issues and different things like that. So I think everyone played a different role. But in terms of the RCMP, like, I do know now, I had a lot of frustration in those months, for sure. And that's probably a whole story in and of itself. But I also will say that I think now I can look back and go, people mostly were doing the best that they could, but it was not enough in a lot of cases. It just wasn't. And it made me feel sour and bitter a lot of the times, because I felt like I was navigating so much physically and psychologically that to reduce some of the other stuff, the administrative stuff, the paperwork, all the things that need to get signed and documented and all that, I felt like it should have been easier, and it wasn't. But I also know now that, like, it was kind of groundbreaking. Like, it was pretty precedent setting. Like, people weren't facing a lot of things that other members, it was a very serious situation. And so I can look at it through a slightly more compassionate lens now that I'm not in it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard that from a lot of people in regards to obviously not as traumatic as your injury, but just, a WCB claim where something happens, you're assaulted by an inmate or you're assaulted by, a member of the public or whatever. It's the administrative stuff that is just an absolute nightmare. And I mean, there's a reason because there's so many T's to cross and I's to dot and things like that. But it is, if that could be streamlined for all first responder agencies and that could be made easier, that would be one less stressor on the officer who's just trying to fucking get through the day,
Survive.
and survive, right? So yeah, I agree with that. That is definitely something I think all agencies could work on and could take forward as like a way to make it better in a shitty situation. Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to think, God forbid, if it would happen again now, like, obviously, I would like to think that my situation and multiple more since have helped create a better, more streamlined approach to helping us and supporting us, because I think you're just so caught up in yourself too, that it's really difficult, like when you're injured and to such a degree, it's really hard to get out of yourself. And so I didn't have the capacity to be asking for help. Like I just assumed it would all be there. And so then when I would identify a gap or a deficit and not know where to turn, it just added more frustration and more vulnerability, and made me feel even weaker, right? Because I didn't know where to turn, and I didn't have the connections because I had a really short career when it happened, right? I didn't know who the people were, and such a big organization, so many different units and groups and people that you're supposed to chain of command, like all these things were just bonking around in my head, and I found it very overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you rehab yourself. How long does this take before you're back kind of, and talk me through getting back into service? Because that is a huge part of it too.
So I was hell bent on doing the pair. Les had said we were going to do it, so that's what we were going to do. And I remember going in June. So when you think about it in hindsight, like, oh my God, I got shot November 27th. And in June, like not very many months later, I was actually at headquarters gym here in Vancouver, and I was going to do the pair. And I had a shitty prosthetic. It was not fitting right. I was having sores on my leg because it wasn't fitting properly, but I was just so anxious to move on with my life and to try to regain what had been so wrongfully taken from me. And I was desperate. I was desperate to move away from Vancouver, to go back to my life. I was lonely. I didn't have any, I didn't have any life really here. It was all about physio and getting that fucking pair done. And so I went to the gym that day with my physiotherapist, and my mom happened to be in town, and I was doing the pair. And as I was going around one of the laps, I was doing one of the easiest obstacles. It's like a knee height jump. And you could mostly you could barely, you can almost step over it. But for me, everything requires that breakdown, like I was talking about with the different sports. Like every movement, you have to break it down in order to make sure that you're going off the proper foot, to get the right angles, and in order to do it most efficiently. You would know all about that. And so when I was trying to do this jump, my foot caught on the pole that was being held up by these two pylons, and it sounded like to me that the pole hit the ground, this wooden floor, and it clank, clank, clanked. And I'm sure it wasn't anything like this, but in my head, that's what it was like. It was like this big sound in an empty, echoey gym. And I fall to the ground, and I'm so pissed off about not being able to overcome this one hurdle. It was so symbolic in my life. It seemed like. Took off my leg, fired it, let loose with a whole pile of curse words, and just said, I can't do this. I have to fucking find a new thing to do. Like I cannot continue down this path. I have been obsessed with this pair since this happened, and clearly I can't do it. So let's just go. And it was a very, very disheartening day. And went back to physio, was sort of steadfast in my decision for a while, thinking, I got to get a new focus, like please things off the table. I'm going to have to find something else to do. I don't know what that's going to be, because it's all I've lived and breathed for months, but I'm going to have to find a new goal. And slowly kind of got a better fitting leg. And my physiotherapist she's a crafty woman. And she was able to get me a few weeks later to go back to the gym. We were just going to work on a couple things. And she videotaped me doing it, and I did the pair. And it seemed kind of anticlimactic because she was just videotaping me for future reference. We were going to analyze it and look back at where we could shave off time and just really be able to compare how I was doing it in July versus how I was doing it in June and how my movements were. And she submitted the video to the RCMP, and I waited for a couple of weeks, and I finally got the call that I had been so anxiously awaiting, and they said, that was enough. You're approved. You can go back. Yay.
Oh, do you know how much my heart is just like soaring for you? Because like having put so many people through those tests and knowing, that they're the same thing, their career depends on it. You have to pass this test or you are not getting that position, or you're not keeping the position that you have already, right? And that devastation when they don't pass, and the complete, like I'm running testing tonight. And when people are successful, I just get so fucking excited about it because it's just amazing. And so I can just imagine, your physio just like videotaping you and being like, don't cheer, just be very calm because she's going to figure it out. Like, just keep her running, right? Because I do the same thing when I'm running people through testing. I'm like, don't get too excited. Don't show them that you're excited because they're going to lose focus. Like, they just need to pay attention, right?
Don't distract them. Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. It was just, oh my God, I just can't even tell you because it felt like, even though it had only been 8 months or something like that, it was day in, day out, all day, every day. And I mean, my physiotherapist even told me after the fact that she lied to me and told me that she was taking a chunk of time off in April, like before all of this, because so if she was taking the time off, then I couldn't come to physio. And I was pissed off at her. I'm like, how dare you take time off? Like, that's not, but as it turns out, she did that because she knew I needed the break. And so it was like it was a strategy on her end in order to give me some rest that I was unwilling to give myself. Like, I just was relentless and so stubborn that I just thought that if I wasn't grinding every day, that was indicative of my level of commitment. And so if I wasn't there grinding every day, then was I really committed? Did I really want to go back to work? That was an interesting strategy that she had to use for me, because as a physiotherapist, I think you, as someone who works so closely with you, you get in tune with so many different sides of a person, and you would find it in your world as well. I mean, certain things that motivate some people just don't work for other people and all that. And so her strategies, she knew me so well. She knew what was going to work, and it certainly did. Yay.
So you were back at work within 8 months.
So I could have been, except so after I passed the pair, I finally got the phone call saying, yeah, that was good. Like, you're approved. But the RCMP said now, because I think what happened with them was, I'm not sure if they really didn't think I could or would ever be successful, but I'd been kind of under the radar now for a while, right? I'd been just doing my grinding. And all of a sudden I surfaced with this video saying, oh, and by the way, like, I can do it. So you said I had to do it, and now I'm doing it. So let's go back to work. So they all of a sudden said, well, you need to do shooting qualifications, firearms, and you need to do FATS training, which is the firearms, the use of force computerized simulator thing that they were using back then. You have to do police driving, and you have to go see a psychologist. And I was furious because I was like, all of those things I could have been knocking off as I was waiting to do the pair. And as it turns out, like, I had already been to the range a couple of times because I wasn't sure how I was going to be around guns anymore, but I had gone and I had shot guns myself, and I had done that. I had sought help from a psychologist. I had also gotten my driver's license again because it's my right foot, and I do drive with with my prosthetic. And so I was really angry because I felt like they were trying to throw up more hurdles for me to fail. That's how I felt in the moment. I didn't feel supported then, for sure, because I thought, oh, great. Like, for 8 months, I've been obsessing about the pair, and now suddenly there's 4 more big things that I have to knock off my list. I guess in my mind, I said, fine, if that's what you want me to do. It's kind of like the pair. I'd never heard of anybody having to do the fucking pair to go back to work after an injury or any sort of medical leave. So I'm not sure why the rules were different for me, but they were. So I did the pair, unlike anybody else, but it was the same kind of thing. Okay, fine. You want me to do those things? I'll do them. And so that's what I did. And so at the end of knocking all those next 4 things off, then it was like, okay, you've got all the proof here now. I've got all the boxes checked, and I got to go back to work on October 4th. So it was 10 months by the time I returned to full duties.
It is insane. So to everybody that is listening right now, you have no fucking excuses. Okay. You have no fucking excuses. I don't give a shit if you tell me that you've been through a whole bunch of shit and you can't pass your pair. I'm going to tell you right fucking now, yes, you can, because you have no leg and you did it in 10 months. So please stop telling me that you're too busy to go to the gym, that you are working 12-hour shifts and you cannot get fit enough to pass the pair. Yes, you fucking can. Okay. Okay, everybody. Yes, you fucking can. Yes,
You can. I agree with that. I do agree with that. You set your mind to it and work hard, and for sure you can.
Totally. So within 10 months, you're back at work and you're back in Kitimat.
Yeah. I chose to go back there because I think, my parents were probably not that thrilled about that decision. But for me, I wanted to reduce the external stressors and the pressures. Like I wanted to go back where I had supportive colleagues. I wanted to go back to the most simple things. Like I knew my way around. I knew the community, right? Like I knew where to go. I wasn't going to have to adjust to like, where the hell's Oak Street, or I don't know, like all these different new things, right? Like where's the high school? I don't know. Like that's a lot when you're first new at a place. And so I wanted to do all the things that I could to reduce any of the stressors. And so if I was going to be successful in returning to work, because while I'd had all those boxes checked now, it's like, okay, but that's all the paper stuff. Like that's all the boxes that need to be checked. Like, how am I really going to feel? And what's this going to look like in practical terms? And so that's why I chose to go back there.
I like it though, like you said, and we kind of said it at the beginning, right? So you can have home safe where you feel safe at home and you're comfortable at home, or you can have work safe where you're comfortable at work. One of those things has to be comfortable though, for you to be able to decrease that stress, right? So that meant that you were home, quotation marks, and you knew where people were and you knew where things were and you knew, the community. Then that's a safer place than being deployed to another new town where nobody and nobody at the detachment. And of course you're going to be the sensational story and, oh my God, tell us, and you're reliving it, right? So yeah, I can totally see why you would choose to go back there. And how did the community, like, were they good when you came back? Was it like?
They were tremendous. Like they really were. And as much as, that's a person from the community obviously shot me, but the community itself was so supportive. And I had been there at that time. Like when I got shot, I'd been there 2.5 years, and I'm a pretty social person too. So by then I did have lots of friends, and I was on these skating teams, and I did golf, and I had some connections there. And it was really, a welcome place to come back to. So I know that it was the wisest decision. I don't know that I would have been really successful in sticking around that long if I would have had to go move to a new community. And because I really needed to prove myself to myself. While I was still, proving myself to other people, the primary goal was proving myself to myself. And I knew that going back there and setting myself up for success was the only way to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you do, and you still have only supposed to be in Kitimat for 5 years because apparently it's a limited posting. So what happens from this? You go back, you're back on regular duty. I'm assuming your first call is a very much a like, holy fuck, what's gonna happen? Right?
Yeah, it was. I was so excited. Like there's video footage of me going in because the news, followed me to go back to work and everything. It was also exciting. And my first call was a bear call, bear patrols. There's a bear walking around in a neighborhood, and we always had to do bear patrols up north, right? I was like, that wasn't exactly what I was looking for as my first call back, but they were very enthusiastic bear patrols that I did conduct that day because I was so excited to get back out there on the road and be.
So then how long did you end up staying in Kitimat? And then where did you go after that?
So I went back to Kitimat October 4th of 99, and then I transferred out a year and a half later, like it was June or July of 2001. And I transferred to Vernon. That's when I moved down to the Okanagan.
Wow. And then did you end up basically doing the rest of your career down in the Okanagan?
No. So I went to the Okanagan and I got married, had 2 kids in quick succession, and then moved down to Surrey. And so I've been in Surrey now for the last 16 years. And so I did, and then I retired January 2020. So.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So the Ontario girl who wanted to go back to Ontario has never returned. She's now a BC girl.
Pretty much. And now that I'm retired and I have my one relocation move is left and it expires soon. And I can't figure out where the heck to go because I've been out here for so long. I always thought that given the first opportunity, because I've been sharing my kids with their father for many years. And that's, mainly why I stayed out here, obviously, is because of my kids. And now that the opportunities arising and the kids are older, it's like, am I going to go back to Ontario? And I just, it's a struggle to figure this out.
It's the next phase of your life. What do you want to do? Right? That's amazing. So when did the idea of a book start to kind of percolate? And did you start to really be like, I think I have a story to tell. I'm going to share it.
I started writing when I was in the hospital, and people had given me all kinds of journals with inspirational quotes at the top and things like that. And I did not write in those ones because I was not feeling it then, but I did keep notes to myself, and it was largely to keep track of stuff because everyone was new. I didn't know who anybody was. And so I would write notes to myself about various things that were happening and visitors that came and stuff like that. And then as I was starting to get better, I would write, almost use it was like a diary kind of thing. I would write these weird little entries about various things that were happening and my really dark times and my main big struggles. And I knew from when I was in the hospital in early December, at some point I'd said, someday I'm going to write a book. There's probably a book in here somewhere. And every time over the next 22 years that I would go back to this document that I'd been sort of compiling all my stuff in, I would look at it and just be like, no, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. And so I realized finally that when I did retire and had a couple of months to sort of decompress and have that distance from the work side of my life, I took another look. Now we're in COVID, took another look back at what I'd been writing. And I thought, oh, maybe, I think there actually might be something here. So I worked on it for a while, reached out to an editor in Edmonton actually, and said, you don't know me, I don't know you. And that's exactly what I want. I want you to tell me if there's anything here, because if there's nothing here, then I'll just bind it up at my local Staples and leave it for my kids to read someday so that they can better understand me. But he came back a couple of weeks later and he said, no, I think you definitely have a message here. And so we worked on it and here we are, published in August 2021.
Amazing. I'm going to immediately, as we finish this, I'm jumping on Amazon and buying a copy because I can't wait. I should have done it before we did the podcast, but let's live in hot mess life that I am, from seat of my pants from one thing to the next thing. I did not, but I should have. So now what are you doing? Like you've had this fulfilling career once you kind of got back into the RCMP, you've done obviously a ton of stuff throughout, moving to Vernon, finishing up in Kitimat, moving to Vernon, ending up in Surrey. What's the future hold for you? What are you looking at for, you don't know where you're going to live, so that's okay. But, what are you hoping to do? Is there another book in the future? Or?
Well, I figure since that one took me 22 years, I've got a little time on my side for another book. I've been a speaker for a long time. Like I started speaking back in like 2000. And so I've been resuming that. It's been, I think, since the book came out and people are starting to have conferences again and actually meet. That's been really rewarding. And I think the book side of things has been a really good challenge for me, especially at this stage, because it's something I knew nothing about. I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know anything about anything to do with publishing a book. And it was just a really good challenge to have at this time in my life, especially as the kids are getting older and I was not working and leaving that sort of, closing the door and moving on from that chapter of my life and my career. It's been really good for that. And I also think that what I've really learned is that this book was a tool to still connect me to people. And that's really how it's been the most gratifying. It's the messages that I get from people who have read it, the people that you have no idea that you would ever, that would even come across it, let alone read it. It's just been so humbling. And I'm absolutely honored and thrilled when I get messages, which I still do. The ratings on Amazon are amazing, which I'm thrilled about. Like I never saw any of that part coming. This was really just a personal legacy for me and something that I pride myself on doing a good job. And I did that. But once you throw it out in the world, you just have no idea and you have no control about where it's going to land or how it's going to land or how it's going to be received and what's going to come next. And so I'm absolutely thrilled about that. So I've been doing some speaking. I was in Indiana recently speaking for an agency called the Wounded Blue, which is an organization out of the States that helps support wounded, injured, and killed. Unfortunately, they're supporting their families as well. I'm going to Prince Edward Island in a couple of weeks to speak at the Atlantic Women in Law Enforcement. So I'm getting some really great opportunities to still feel like I'm making a difference, but just in a different way now.
Crazy. I just, again, karmically, you put things out into the universe and things come back to you. That's what I believe, at least. But I had said to a friend this morning, I said, sometimes when you've gone through something that is so toxic and so shitty, and you had the wherewithal and you were brave enough to get out of that situation or to change that situation, the next time you come up on something that is toxic or scary or negative, it's not as scary to get out of it because you already know that it's easier. Like, you know, you've done it before. So it's like, and you didn't die, right? Or you didn't, you know, it wasn't the end of the world because you chose to leave that career or leave that relationship or, you know, change that thing that was, you know, the friendship that was causing you, you know, pain or discomfort or whatever. And so then you, when you're all of a sudden have this new chance, you're just like, yeah, let's do it, because you know what, I do have something good to, you know, contribute. And it's amazing the things that then come back to you when you're willing to take that leap and when you're willing to not be scared and to just say, you know what, it doesn't feel right, and so I'm going to go and do something different. And then it just, this whole different world opens up, and you're like if I had been stuck, if I had just chosen to just continue grinding it out in that job or that relationship or that, you know, scenario, none of this would have came out. None of this would be available to me. None of this would be happening. And so I think, yeah, it's amazing that the things that will come if you step out of that.
I really, yeah, I appreciate that too. And because I think that that's really the definition of resilience, right? Is like building that confidence that you have survived and thrived despite shitty times and despite really hard, dark times. And I think that was one of the other things. I mean, I felt so alone and so isolated. I've been a single mom for many years, and while their dad is very much in there, you know, on my watch, it's just me. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard. They were 1 and 3 when I started being a single mom. I was still having a really difficult time with a lot of the circulation issues in my leg and things like that. But over time, you keep building up more examples of how you've overcome things and how you've learned and how you've trained yourself to reach out for help and stuff. And it's not easy, and it's really difficult sometimes to go to the dark times, and you put these timelines on yourself saying, okay, well, I'm allowed to feel sorry for myself or be, you know, down for like the weekend, but by Monday I got to get my shit together and stuff. And I realized too that I can't really assign deadlines or timelines to healing. Like I got to feel it. And I can go into every dark, hard time knowing that 100% of the times in the past, I've come out on the other side and it's been good. And so there's always, always hope. And I know that. Yes. And I keep building that confidence and proving to myself. And it's like I was a police officer, right? Gathering that evidence to say, hey, you know what? You've made it and you will make it again.
Oh, God, you are just inspiring, Laurie. Like you're just literally, I needed this conversation today. I love it. You're blowing my mind. I'm in awe of you, honestly. I have taken up so much time out of your day today. And I've got a couple quick rapid fire questions for you that I want to ask. Some of them are funny. Some of them are just random. But just to keep you on your toes, you know, keep you thinking. So let's go back to your time in uniform. What was your favorite food or snack when you were on shift?
Oh, so my favorite food would always be ice cream or Smart Food popcorn, but I would never eat those. Well, I'd never eat popcorn and like Smart Food in public. That's just, you wouldn't want to see that. So the 24-hour gas bar that they had, that was the only place that was open throughout the night when I was doing all those night shifts for 10 months. They had they were like pepperoni sticks baked in a doughy, cheesy kind of bread. So I ate like an alarming number of those throughout my night shifts in 10 months. So I would just the guy who worked at it was called a Mohawk back then, and it had like a little snack section and whatever. He'd call me when there were fresh ones in. Like that's how sad my life was. So yes, that was my favorite food on night shift, 100% hands down. I still get excited when I see them in grocery stores.
That's hilarious. That guy is a hero and he needs to be protected at all costs. If he is going to call you and tell you when they are hot and fresh, he is a hero.
Yep.
That's so funny. Okay. What's the coolest location you've ever worked at or been to on a call?
Okay. So I would say that when I started speaking, back in the early 2000s, I got a request to go up to the Yukon.
Oh.
And I got to speak at a school function and then also a regimental dinner thing for the RCMP. But what they did was they flew me up on the RCMP plane, and they gave me a couple of days to kind of spend there too. So I got to go dog sledding. up in the Yukon, which was absolutely incredible. So that was one of my favorite memories. So while I wasn't working, I was kind of working because I was there for work, but dog sledding in the Yukon.
Oh,
There's
so
my answer.
cool. So cool. Definitely on my bucket list. The Yukon, the Northwest Territories, I cannot wait to get up there. It's definitely on my bucket list.
Okay, second one, actually, I went to China too. I went to China in 2008 for the 2008 Paralympics. So that was also very, very cool. And that was definitely work.
So were you in the Olympics or what were you doing?
So I was working for the Integrated Security Unit, which was doing the security planning for the 2010 Olympics here, and so Olympics and Paralympics. And so in 2008, they sent me out to China to get some exposure to some of the security measures that they were taking for the 2008 games. So that was a very, very cool experience too. So those are my two highlights, I'd say.
Yes, unbelievable. Wow. See, and we didn't even really touch on all the things that you've done when you like kind of moved through Vernon and Surrey. We're going to have another episode with you where we can talk about all that stuff because that's freaking amazing too.
Well, I'm retired and every day's Saturday, so you know.
Living your best life. I love it. That's awesome. Okay, what would you have as a piece of advice for someone entering a career with the RCMP or kind of a career in law enforcement?
I would say the biggest tool that you can have is to be aware and educate yourself about resilience and the psychological side. And I think that we are very, very good at taking care of our physical selves, especially in policing, because we have to be fit to get in and to pass all these tests and stuff. So we focus so much on the physical side of things and our capabilities there. And we're doing a better job, but we need to do a way, way better job in dealing with the mental side of things. Reducing the stigma, getting help when you need to, going for periodic check-ins. It's not just about the physical side of things, it's the psychological side too, because you're going to see things that you can never unsee, and you're going to experience things that they will stay with you forever. And it's very difficult, it's very emotional, but if you have the right tools in place, you'll be able to cope with that. And so never think that there's not help out there. There's always hope, and continue to educate yourself because it's a lifelong process in terms of resilience and the psychological health.
Fantastic advice. Absolutely fantastic advice. My other friend that we interviewed in season 1, Sandra, she's also with the RCMP. That was her advice too. Get yourself a therapist, get somebody that you can talk to because you're going to need it, and not in a negative way, this is to maintain your health, just like you would have a doctor that you would go and see. And just like you go and get your teeth checked by the dentist and you get your eyes checked, you need to have a regular check-in with somebody for your brain, because we don't prioritize it and we don't take care of it the way that we should. And a lot of us don't even know that we have things going on in there that we should address because we just ignore it so much, right? Until it hits the point where something happens, right? Where we have a traumatic event and then we no longer can cope, or the cup overflows and we're no longer coping, right? So yeah, fantastic advice. Absolutely fantastic advice.
I think that one of the book that I read at the most meaningful time in my career is by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, and it's called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. And he's an incredible speaker. And I was actually so humbled when I reached out to him when I wrote my own book because of how powerful his words, because I had heard him speak at a conference as well, but I'd also read his book years and years ago. And I reached out to him and asked him if he would read my book and if he would mind, making some comments for it. And we have now developed a bit of a friendship, and that book was pivotal for me. And I think that it should be mandatory reading for everybody in law enforcement, because the messages in there I had never heard before, and they landed in such a way that they just made such a meaningful shift in my own life. And so that's the other resource that I would say is probably something that helped save my life.
We will be putting that in the show notes for sure, so people can get their hands on that, because I think, yes, I love it. I love when we can share things like that can help other people. So it has been amazing, Laurie. Today has been, just like I said, I've learned so much from you. I've been absolutely inspired and lit on fire by your story, and just by the knowledge and the wisdom that you're sharing, the inspiration that you're sharing has just been incredible. So thank you for being brave and reaching out and saying, hey, I want to tell you my story because I feel so honored that I get a chance to share it on this show, and that the people that listen to this show are going to take away a lot of the same things that I did from you, and just your message for the world, and that energy that you're putting out there. So, I mean, like I said, bow down to you. You are an amazing woman. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any last words you want to give to our listeners before we sign off?
I just want to give the ones that are trying their, that you're doing the test for tonight, I hope they go get them.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Go crush
Fantastic.
it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. I wish you all the best. Have fun in Prince Edward Island. I can't believe that you get to go there. Another bucket list item that I would like to do. Spread your message, share your love, and we will put your information in the show notes so people can reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to be further inspired by you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It was great chatting with you, Nikki. Have a great night.
You too. Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.